Hi, Utkarsh. I'm really, really happy to have you on the show. I've known you for 8 years now, since my YIF days, and you've always been an inspiring figure in my journey when I think about making career decisions. So, super happy and grateful to have you on the show today. So, welcome to yet another episode of the Close Call podcast. So, I'd love to kick this off and start with your introduction and your journey. Tell us everything, all the pivots, all the difficult decisions that you've had to make, and how did you land up in the position that you're here today?
Um, I am what I am because of the company that I keep, and thanks to wonderful people like Jeshri and others, I am the average of the groups of 5 people that I surround myself with. So, in all my decisions, where to study, where to work, I've tried to really surround myself with people that I can learn with and from, and that has always been the founding thesis of Network Capital. I know one day you came to Microsoft just to, discuss work and life and all of that. And I told you network capital was a thing at that time, but Microsoft was my job and network capital was a hobby, something that I did, but very seriously pursued on weekends. I cared a lot about it. So after my MBA at INSEAD, which I went for right after finishing the Young India Fellowship program at Ashoka University, I worked in Microsoft sometimes with Satya Nadella, sometimes with the president Jean-Philippe Courtois, supporting them on various projects. That was the highlight. But my day job was basically leading business development in emerging markets, building business models that can be for benefit and, of course, grow the revenues. So it was really engaging opportunity for me to learn more about cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and how these can be applied to uplift people in emerging markets. Loved my job, grew a lot in the company, saw Microsoft transform from its stock price being $30 to $350, and it was um, quite a beautiful experience. And Microsoft also empowered me to really write extensively and work on weekends on stuff that I cared about, and it was a beautiful time. But in 2020, I had an important decision to make. I was dating somebody, and the pandemic had put things in a bit of a limbo for all of us. So our wedding at the time was postponed. Network Capital by that time had thousands of users. Many of them liked the experience. I had 1,000 true fans. So I made the decision that I would actually quit Microsoft
Hmm.
and start pursuing Network Capital full time. And I've written extensively about how I went about that journey in a Harvard Business Review essay. But the essence was, I thought, because I have 1,000 true fans and a business model that works and a problem that I truly care about, with or without investors, I can do this. I can be energized by solving the problem. So I quit 30th September 2020, and since then I have been building Network Capital. 1 year after start, we got funded by Facebook. And 1 year after that, a unicorn, blockchain unicorn, acquired a stake in the company. So I have this dual role of being the chief executive of Network Capital and the chief marketing officer of the unicorn that acquired us. In addition, I ended up doing a degree in moral philosophy from University of Oxford, when I believe you also studied, and now working on a DPhil, which is PhD at the University of Oxford, which is purely out of interest. So I've looked at my career in phases. So a lot of my early 20s was about getting degrees and like really building a solid foundation. My late 20s was largely about corporate experience and really learning the nuts and bolts of enterprise sales, business development, and so forth. And my early 30s and so forth have now been about building a company. And I see, it evolving into a combination of academia and investing. So I've invested in about 20, 25 companies as an angel, but I see myself doing all of that. So these are my portfolio of interests and careers. And I'd love to, talk more about anything that interests you or your listeners might find engaging.
Wow. You've said a lot of things, and you've said it so humbly, as if, oh, I'm just doing this, and that. So, the first question that I actually have for you is, you wear multiple hats, and these are not just hobbies and side projects. You're going to do it once in a blue moon, but you pursue them seriously. And these are material passions, like you call it, a portfolio of things that you do very, very well. It's a mundane question. How does one find time? How does one then really compartmentalize at that time into doing things that matter, that move the needle for each of
Hmm.
these pursuits? So is it a Google calendar that you manage, or is it today I want to be a writer and then you write a book? How does that
Hmm.
work for you?
So Jeffrey, as you know, that I had a child, a baby girl, 3 months back. So being a parent
Congratulations.
actually really pushes you to be even more productive than you were because you have no option. I have my mum, who's a writer based in India. She's here to sort of help me a little bit, but essentially you have to do a lot more in the same time. And right now, like I have my PhD, running two companies, and a lot of my writing work continues. But I see these as syncretic um, opportunities rather than something completely different. So, Network Capital is largely a career coaching mentorship platform. We make money by selling subscriptions to companies, like running these workshops for companies and then selling subscriptions to people. But it depends a lot about advancing ideas and enabling lots and lots of people to make career transitions. And it becomes like a flywheel. Once enough people succeed, an alumni network builds, and so forth. Now, what I write is a combination of what I learned from network capital, applied with, of course, moral philosophy, which is my degree that I talked to you about, and my PhD is on social networks, or at least it draws heavily on studying social networks. So, of course, it requires a very different mindset, but the core concept is the same. What I invest in is typically companies that also involve, achieving product market fit through network effects of some kind. And even in my role as the CMO of the blockchain unicorn, what it comes down to primarily is building and nurturing a community. So, yes, it may seem like these are seven very different things, and to some extent they are, but
Mm-hmm.
there are lots of dots that connect. So, my advice to um, friends or just anyone who wants to brainstorm is um, look for these synergies
Yeah.
and go after them because it's often about managing your energy than time. And I've
Mm.
noticed that if you consistently are not able to find time for something, that means it's not a priority. And there's no harm in saying that, hey, it's not a priority right now, but at some point it would be. So that's how I approach this entire time management, energy management equation.
Thank you so much for that. Very, very interesting take on finding synergy between the things that you do, so it all flows together. Have you ever thought about context switching as a new term that's been up? Um, because yes, there's some things that are similar. There's a good overlap between the things that you do. But let's say when you're driven by numbers, when you're taking a commercial role or a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders versus
Mm,
writing something, versus just doing something purely for passion or interest.
mm.
So does it ever affect you, or how do you then think about these different contexts?
Yeah. So context switching was a challenge for me, but I have had some practice in it. So Monday to Fridays mostly would be about enterprise business development sales in my Microsoft. Weekends would be about uh, network capital, the passion project. So I had but it was a very clear cut thing that this is your split. Now, being an academic, would be academic, and being the CMO and the CEO and writer, does get into tricky terrains when it comes to context switching. And sometimes I'm not able to do such a good job of balancing the context switching and doing the kind of deep work that is required. So what I try and do is when my daughter sleeps at night between say 11 and 4 or 11 and 5 a.m., that's roughly when I do a lot of my deep work in a go, in one stretch. Because during the day, right, there is a lot of stuff to be done for a baby and meetings and calls and stuff, and I'm very fortunate to have some help on that front. But it is work. So I try and do a lot of my deep work, no context switching work at night. During the day, I try to be as efficient as I possibly can, to be a present son, a present partner, a present father, a present friend. Um, Nights I reserve for thinking, writing, that kind of stuff.
Super. I just want to touch upon one more point, because also correct me if I'm wrong. One of the common advices or vices that I've heard is, as you start to do a lot of things, as you oversee a lot of things, the success and the quality of work that you produce also depends on the people that you work with and the kind
Hmm.
of team that you hire, the people that you pick. Um, so, doing seven things, would you attribute any of that to having a good team that supports you?
Yeah.
And if that's so, then how do you know who is the right person?
Yeah. It comes down to the average of the five people. So that's one of my, I think, areas of strength where the groups of five people that I'm part of, whether it's in philosophy, whether it's investing, whether it's education careers through network capital or blockchain, that gives me a lot of ideas, and it sort of makes me more productive by uh, helping me see spots where others won't. So in other words, it helps you become a better contrarian if you surround yourself with people who can challenge your thinking, who can complement your thinking. And the original quote was that you are the average of five people you surround yourself with. I don't fully agree with it, because of a person like, say, me or you, we did liberal arts, then we did, MBA, then we're doing business building. There are multiple interests. So you become, instead of one group of five people, you can look at being multiple groups of five people. What it avoids is it avoids bias. It helps you see the world from a fairly fresh perspective. And it also, like, people move often, things change, friendships fall apart, people get busy. These things happen. So it also gives you kind of a cushion that you're not imposing on anyone, or if, a relationship has run its course, or a friendship, for whatever reason, is not being able to be prioritized, you can actually give it a break and come back to it when times allows for it.
Super. Okay. So now really getting into the meat of the podcast, which is talking about the challenges.
Hmm.
So the question is, what is one of the biggest, most pivotal challenges that you've faced in your career? Why is it so important that others have to hear that story? And the
Hmm.
last bit is, how did you maneuver that? Or what are the frameworks that you learned or derived from that? So
Yeah.
others can sort of copy your framework. So
Yeah. Let me give you a few examples of pretty difficult moments, and how I overcame them with a little bit of luck, a little bit of planning, a little bit of intentionality. So one challenge was that towards the end of INSEAD, where I went for my MBA, I actually met with an accident. So I had a bunch of jobs that were lined up, but all of them went away because I was in the hospital getting surgery. And after that, I spent, several weeks at home in bed, like not really knowing where things are gonna go. And at the same time, because I'd just gone after YIF for an MBA, and before that I was in nonprofit, so I didn't have any savings, no money, nothing of that sort. So the loan kept, growing at a really staggering pace. And those few months turned out to be really hard, and um, sometimes you challenge yourself to to think more, but sometimes you just feel that, wow, this is really not working out. And things before that were amazing for me. I was a torchbearer of YIF. Had done quite well at INSEAD, um, and I think generally people thought that he'll probably do well for most things that he'll pursue. But at that time, it was the first time I had a serious amount of unpleasant thoughts. One may call them self-doubt, that I didn't enjoy dealing with. But at that time, I really, turned to philosophy for the first time and really was able to nudge myself to focus on what I could control and not fret too much on, time lost or why me or something of that sort. And then eventually I did get a really good job at Microsoft. and that was transformational. So this unpleasant self-doubt didn't last very long, but my brief brush with it was enough to, give me a sense of the people who really deal with it or who are crippled by self-doubt. It's not easy. So for anyone who is that, you're not alone, and it happens to a lot of people, even those who are considered decently successful by many standards. And the other was that, look, for me, leaving Microsoft and moving countries and, changing like a location geography also turned out to be a bit hard, not because of anything else. It's just that there were too many changes
Yeah.
all at once.
Yeah.
Location, marital status. I was single that time, no responsibilities. Then, quitting a job which had prestige, which had good income,
A
and I
regular
told you stock
paycheck.
price, regular paycheck, stock price done really well, to building a sort of new identity and starting from scratch. And everyone knows Microsoft when nobody knew at the time, or network capital, at least very few people did. And I found myself almost trying too hard to be heard, which was
Mm.
foreign to me because, generally, uh, like I don't struggle with an audience. Most people in most places would like I'll find my tribe and I'll be. But this was a time where there was the pandemic, and I found myself going the extra mile. Oh, please listen to me. I'm building something really interesting, and this is very important. Somebody should do it. And many times, as I said, people are busy. People will not be able to match
Yeah.
your energy or pay enough attention to what you're building. And one can take it personally. One can say, "Oh my God, maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe my
People hate
idea is
me.
not particularly, yeah, of that kind." So I actually struggled with that a bit. And For me, I'd always prioritize profitability first, and like investment on my terms. And I wanted investment from a really solid brand in the space. And as you know, because we've discussed network capital before it was a company, um, Facebook was very important for us. We built a subscription-based group working with their team up front. So there was always the dream, person to have as an investor, sorry, as a funder. And I felt much better, mostly because I felt that, okay, finally one important check mark is done. Now people may think that this is something real, this is not really a passion project that he does on the side, because a lot of time, even well-meaning friends called it initiative. Oh, this is nice mentoring initiative, which is not wrong, and nobody said it with a bad intent, but it made me feel sometimes that wow, like I quit my job, did all of these things, and now I went from having uh, a serious identity to that of maybe a minimal identity,
Mm.
which was not easy to deal with.
Wow. This, I'm sure a lot of founders that are listening to this can relate, because you go from having everything set and then everything is regular, stable, to having to start from scratch and
Yeah,
really creating a new identity, so much of self-doubt. And then when, especially when others says, oh, it's a new thing that you're trying, all the best for that. And it almost minimizes the amount of passion, amount of hard work that
yeah.
goes into it. And this is something that I really want to touch upon, Utkarsh, is because from the outside, even me, when I looked at your journey, especially all the things that you've said, you were my alumni of senior at the Young India Fellowship, and then seeing your journey, how well you were doing at Microsoft, and then network capital taking off as soon as you spoke about it on the WhatsApp group and how buzzing that was. For all of us, people in my batch, it looked like this guy's got all of it sorted. He knows what he's doing. He's going behind it. But then you forget, and sometimes you overlook the kind of hard work that goes behind all of that, the kind of doubts, the kind of tribulations that one faces to really build something that makes others jealous. Um, so super happy, and then really happy to hear the story, and thank you so much for sharing that in a very candid way. Now, when did you realize that all of these things were feelings that in your head, and what did you do to really overcome them, or say things like this thought shall not pass, and how did you
Hmm.
really keep them at the bay? Yeah.
Yeah. So with regards to, success metrics, I
Hmm.
tend to be pretty disciplined. So while it would not be the ideal scenario that I found myself trying a bit too hard to be heard, etc. Okay, not everywhere. But I found myself, yes, this is what starting from scratch looks like, and let's be super disciplined. When I was starting Network Capital, I'd written an essay, "How to Build Your Category of One," and I kept going back to it. Am I still building category of one? There's a lot of noise in edtech at the time. Every other company was getting funded. Very few of them exist now because it's challenging. It's like some of those business models are getting tested now. But I was very disciplined about what metrics do I ignore and what metrics do I go after. So I told you, getting funding on my terms from the kind of investors that wanted was important. Becoming profitable really soon was important. Being able to be really nimble, which is like not have too much fat in terms of people who don't really need to be there. That was really important. And then the discipline of doing a lot of world building, which I call instead of marketing. So all of world building of network capital happens through writing. So if through my essays in Harvard Business Review, to the few books that I've written, to the magazine articles that I write, and in that I deal with themes that I have reflected upon, and I think other young professionals will talk about. You mentioned something, envy and jealousy. So I've written about it. It's one of my most well-read essays because a little bit of envy is inevitable, right? Some people will envy me, some people will envy you, and there's good envy. Oh, I want to, be like her, be like him. And there's bad envy. Oh, I want to take this person down. This person is too cool for school. Let me try and do that. And once you start having a few things, do people you people get? I did get good envy and bad envy. And good envy is lovely. Bad envy can be a bit of a nuisance. But you can't do anything about it. You don't control what other people bring to the table. So this discipline was very helpful to me in keeping me on track, ignoring the noise of the market, ignoring noise of sometimes the investors, and really sticking true to building a profitable for purpose business that grows really fast. And eventually, even till the day of the acquisition, which I was also very clear, I'll do it on my terms. These are the terms, and there's not too much room for. And I always knew how I want network capital to be valued. And there was a particular method. So these things, this kind of pre-thought had gone into it, Jayashree. So I wouldn't say it was a surprise,
Mm-hmm.
the speed at which things happen, funding, acquisition, all of those things. But this was going to be the end outcome on my terms. And these are the part of the notes that I made for myself. This is the playbook. This is the way to go,
Super.
including the PhD, including the other stuff. So these are all in my plan. I will say that the past 4 years have been definitely very, very accelerated for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say from 2014 to 2020, after INSEAD, like that was a really accelerated growth in the enterprise space. But 2020 to 2024, even personally, professionally, and other intellectually, has been accelerated. Sometimes you feel that wow, this is you're going at a speed
Mm-hmm.
which is probably not sustainable. But so far, I have managed to keep my eye on the ball.
Super. So, being disciplined, knowing what your North Star metric is, and then keeping a very close eye on that, that helped you really separate the noise from the signal and
Yeah,
helped you keep sane. So, would that be a good summary of how you dealt with some
yeah.
of the challenges that came your way? Okay.
Process discipline, Jayashree.
Mm.
Process
Okay.
discipline is really important. Like I write every day. I
Mm-hmm.
read every day. Um, and there is a certain rhythm, certain rigor to it, and I stick to it. One day
Mm.
before I was getting married in India, I still sent out the Network Capital newsletter.
Wow.
Again, like this is not like a startup hustle story or anything of that sort. This is important for my well-being as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not about like, oh wow, like working 18 hours a day, or he's sending mails from his wedding um, mandap or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or from the hospital. There's no nobility in trying. It just means that you're bad at time and
Mm-hmm.
energy management. But it's just like just keeping a little bit of a rhythm and routine is helpful for me.
Wow, it's interesting that you put it this way that most of the time it's always about, oh, how do I stop the work and get into my my other life,
Mm.
which is where I'm just the other roles that I play, versus you saying having a process discipline and keeping my identity is what makes you sane. It keeps you happy. It says, okay, I've done my bit for the day.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. So is that no burnout for you then?
I have found myself pretty
Hmm.
exhausted at many points in time. Um, and the thing is that exhaustion, or I wouldn't call it burnout. I mean, let's
Hmm.
call it exhaustion for now.
Okay.
You tell me if you want to call it burnout later, I'll leave it out. So a lot of exhaustion comes from sometimes not knowing what to do.
Mm,
So sometimes when you're stuck with a business decision or you're not sure about a strategy, and some days you're just not able to make
yeah.
enough progress. I think for me, a lot of exhaustion comes from that. It
Mm,
doesn't come from, um, context switching. So lack of clarity creates
got it.
a headache for me. And that does happen. I would
Mm,
say there are a percentage of days,
yeah.
I would say 10 days, 10% of the days where I would feel that. And I should try and reduce that. But right now it's about 10, 15%.
I think that's a good number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
10%, 10,
Yeah.
15% of the days I definitely feel that, oh, I'm struggling with this decision. I'm
Hmm.
not able to make progress. The to-do list is getting
Hmm.
longer. Calls are not stopping.
Yeah.
And I find myself in this situation. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if it's burnout or exhaustion, but it's a really good question.
Super. Okay, so you also do something new now, which is you angel invest, and
Yeah.
you've made a significant number of investments, more than some of the funds, I'd say. So what what intrigues you about angel investing? Is it a financial pursuit for you? I know you also sort of take data from that into your doctoral studies. Is it a mix of all of these? But also, angel investing needs to be in a certain rigor, needs to be done methodically.
Mm.
It's not just about throwing around cash and hoping things are going to turn out well.
Yeah.
What motivates you, and where did you learn the art of then
Mm.
picking the right asset to
Yeah.
put your money in?
So I do both public markets and
Okay.
like angel. So public market also I find really interesting. It's a great way to learn about different sectors. Um, if a company like Chipotle or Nvidia, ARM, I've been studying them for a while, and of course, it's a developed keen sense of interest in that. And when it comes to VC investing, I typically invest when I have asymmetry of information, and by running a fairly large platform for many years, many companies want me on their, as an advisor. They want to partner with Network Capital, and it also gives me um, an opportunity to see people work for a while. So I will typically invest in people who I've seen operate for a while, really high integrity people, usually having some sort of network effects in their operation. Ideally, where network capital partnering with them can help them even more, and where I can be a useful advisor. So I would, of course, love to have many, many exits, but I started in, I want to say 2021. Maybe I'd done a couple before that, but seriously, 2021 and 21. And I'm really bullish about a few of them doing really well. The data tells me so. And they are all network capital people I've known for several years. And that backing a person you've observed, you just get enough data points to know. For example, if you were to start a company, I don't. I would obviously like to see the deck, and I can be very straightforward with you. But I don't need to know. You don't need to pitch me on yourself. That information is now, it's 8 years worth of data. So it's a fairly straightforward decision. If the idea is good, I'll invest in a heartbeat. It's that simple.
Super, super. I really like the fact that you are a people first person and you're driven by data. It's not just you've met the person, had a great coffee chat, and then here's the money, but you've really followed them. You really see how the integrity, the decision making, cadence. Wow,
Because
that's a
the
treasure
coffee,
trove of data.
the coffee mistake is a big one because
Yeah.
look, Jeshri, generally, my first impression with investors or people
Hmm.
is fine. So uh, sometimes I wish, like I know that if some person just coming across as a well put together person with lots of degrees and qualification is a helpful start. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think investment decisions should be
Made on that.
done by that. You should just have seen people. If I ran a fund from the beginning of anyone who ever started companies within network capital, I just put in, say, uh, a nominal amount of money, I would have made a crazy return because
Mm,
so many people who I've observed for a while have gone on to build exceptionally successful companies.
mm,
So the broad lesson for anyone listening is that if you build a network or if you're part of a network, you should basically invest in any person you have a data on, but don't invest too much. Look, of course, have the general filters. And actually, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't give advice. I'm just saying that if I were to turn back time and just put in an angel check on network capital members who were building a company, all of them, without like, X amount, the fund would have done exceptionally well.
no, I think that's a pretty good way to look at founders, because at very early stage you're betting on the founders. Super. The last question for the show today. So we've spoken a lot about productivity and
Mm.
mental models and all of that. Are there any tools that you particularly use to really compartmentalize your days, to really get things done, to really track all the to dos that you have in mind? Because new thoughts, new ideas keep coming. You're on a walk, you're on a
Mm.
swim, whatever. So, how do you sort of do that?
Yeah, I use a fountain pen and a diary.
Wow,
Very old
old school.
school. Yeah, because I found myself spending so much time on the phone and
Mm,
otherwise, and if there are so many apps for so
yeah,
many things. So for research work, etc., I will of course check out online resources, etc. But for planning for stuff that I need to do, I just use a fountain pen. Yeah, just like
super.
putting pen to paper has always been helpful to. Even at YF, by the way, I would take a ton
Hmm.
of notes on with pen at INSEAD as well. At Oxford, actually, now I see myself taking notes on both the laptop as well as this. But my day is planned on pen and paper.
Well, thank you so much, Utkarsh. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm so happy we had this conversation. I hope to do more of this. Hopefully, maybe a V version two or another a continuation on this chat. Thank you so much for your time again, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Jayashree. I really enjoyed the conversation. Take care.